The Evermore podcast is now sponsored by WFST Total Compliance. WFST provides fire safety requirements UK-wide to prepare you and your employees should the worst happen. Do what you do best and visit wfst.co.uk today. Enjoy the episode.
Good evening and welcome back to the Evermore podcast with your match reaction to that game for Newcastle 2, Manchester City 3 defeat right at the last. Kind of heartbreaking, really, I guess, to have gone through so long and for Newcastle to have been ahead for a fair amount of time and to have lost it right at the death. Really, really frustrating. I think I say that every time I do one of these. It's frustrating, and it really is to see that end result. But we'll go through the game in a second. As always, if you are new to the channel, please remember to drop a like on the video, to subscribe. We're about 8 away from 6,300 now. So thank you very much for all the support, and keep it coming. Thank you again. So yeah, we'll get stuck into the game, and then I'll get stuck into some of your comments tonight. Chris is at the game tonight, hence the reason you've got me. So I'm sure he would have enjoyed the vast majority of that, to be fair. But we'll start with the lineups as always. Obviously, there was the enforced change for Joe Linton coming out of this side, and Lewis Miley starting again, and I guess the other talking point was there was no Tino Livramento due to illness today, which is a shame. Could have really done with those legs coming off the bench, especially late on. And I think we'll get into that, but that's a big miss to have some more experienced legs to be available off the bench. But the game started, and realistically, it was kind of one-way traffic. I think apart from the disallowed goal early on, Manchester City really got into their groove. They really dominated possession and really looked the threat. Newcastle looked really good on the counter, and that was really where the disallowed goal early on sort of came from. That ball through, clearly offside, and this is another incident where linesman just has to put the flag up because we've seen another player injured from play being allowed to carry on, and there be a contact injury from this. And there've been plenty of them, and yes, from a Newcastle point of view, it benefited them with Ederson having to go off, but it's not great to see at all. But yes, clearly offside for that one, and then Newcastle nearly took advantage of the injury to Ederson when he hadn't gone off, and somehow or other Anthony Gordon, Miguel Almiron and Bruno managed to screw up an opportunity where there were three of them pretty much against the goalkeeper and one defender, and don't know how on earth they managed to screw that one up to get themselves 1-0 up, and then the Man City show took over, and their passing is always exceptional. Phil Foden was finding those little pockets of space in behind the midfield in front of the defenders and being able to run forward and pick a pass at will, really. But it sort of the danger for them was on the break. For Newcastle looked really threatening every time they got the ball, and there was a little bit of space in behind the defence for Isak to run into, and we saw that a couple of times. The goal, I've got the Manchester City goal first. The Manchester City goal comes, obviously, the great little build-up following a really contentious decision. I think the ball's obviously comes across from the left to Walker, who puts a good ball in for for Bernardo Silva to cheekily little back flick into the goal. But realistically speaking, should that that foul up on the left hand side as Anthony Gordon's trying to run past Ruben Diaz, the arm goes out across him. There's no attempt to kind of play for the ball. It's just a block. It looked a foul to me. Others will have their opinion of it, but it did look a foul. And I think Newcastle players were quite rightly upset about that fact and made that to the referee. But it's sad to see that you can see goals on the back of contentious decisions like that. And that's not long after. I think, was it Bruno that got booked in the 20th minute? So that left him really suspect for the rest of the game as well. So he's trying to sort of step off and not get involved in too much. But that really frustrating with the goal. And I know that there will be a lot of people that will look at that and think that's such a that's a wrong decision from the referee. There were a fair few moments that he let go. There's the foul later on from Bruno himself when he stands on Rodri's foot, and then Rodri goes in for a little bit of retribution. I think he was unlucky to get booked for that later on, and he certainly made his feelings known to the referee across the rest of the half and at half time as they were walking off. But I say Newcastle weathered that sort of early storm, that early sort of 30 minutes of pressure from Manchester City, and that break, that counter attack will really serve them well. The goal that Isak scores, it's an utterly sensational pass from Bruno to whip it across from sort of the inner right hand side of the field into the path of Isak running through, and he gets 1-on-1 with Kyle Walker, and it's such a good run from Anthony Gordon to run on the outside of him and just draw Kyle Walker's vision away from Isak for a second, and just allows him to cut back in, and it's such a good finish. And then to follow it up again with the Gordon one on the break where Dan Burn releases, and I actually thought he'd massively overhit the pass instantly, but it was in the perfect place for Gordon to run into with his pace, cut inside Kyle Walker, and it's such an instinctive sort of finish into that far corner. I mean, watch it back again. He never looks up at the goal as soon as he's sort of cutting in. He knows exactly what he wants to do with it, and it's pinpoint accuracy into the far corner. Just a brilliant finish. And Newcastle at that point were flying, and you just think that's the get into half time, keep the lead, and then come out and hopefully be able to hang on, or maybe pick up another one on the break in the second half. But yeah, that was, I mean, the first half as it goes, that was, I guess, really positive. 2-1 up against City, who've been in such good form. Newcastle with not an awful lot to choose from on the bench as well to come off. So there was an element of they need to reserve their energy as well for the second half, because it was always going to be difficult. I'm just going to go through a few of the comments if I can catch up with some of them. I know there's been some comments around Newcastle sitting back, and I get the frustration with the team sitting back, but Manchester City are excellent. Sometimes you have to sit in, and as somebody put in there, park the bus. It's not great, it's not pretty, but when you conserve an energy, when you don't have a lot of options off the bench, then sometimes you have to. And better teams have done it and done good things by doing it. Like I say, it's not pretty, it's not what you want to do, but sometimes it is necessary. Biggest thing I think today, but just Newcastle didn't have the options off the bench to be able to sort of change things up. There's not an awful lot when you've got 2 goalkeepers, 5 defenders, a teenager and a 67-year-old Matt Ritchie to come off the bench. It's not what you need, and this shows where Newcastle are at the moment. Unfortunately, in that sort of part of the project. Let's have a look. Yeah, so John's Kitchen did well, outclassed a tight end. It's tiredness was a big thing. I put in my notes for the game in the second half, and I'll get into some of that. After about 60 minutes, Anthony Gordon looked absolutely shattered. He looked wrecked and really probably needed to come off at that point. He had one sort of run afterwards where He does break away and lays the ball to Dan Burn to put across the goal, but I think Isak's shot was saved at that point, but he looked shattered. Isak looked tired. And the midfield just had obviously dropped off. There was no ball out for them, and it reminded me so much of that second half. It reminded me so much of the PSG game where they just gave away possession because there was no out ball for them. There was no players upfield. Everybody had dropped so deep, and I get that argument then about sitting too deep, that it doesn't give you an out ball. But when the players are as tired as that part of the game as they were, then naturally you drop in deeper to try and prevent those spaces for the passing lanes through. And unfortunately, with somebody like Kevin De Bruyne in the side and Rodri as well, they can find gaps in the smallest passing the smallest of gaps. So it's really, really tough. But Lewis Hall comes on in the second half, which I think sort of makes some sense. Gordon looked wrecked. I do think maybe one or two others should have come on. And again, like the PSG game, like I say, just giving some fresh legs into that forward line just to give out balls, to be able to bring the play up the field. Parkinson coming on for Isak, perhaps maybe it's just to just run, put the ball into the corners and run them, run them forward, bring the midfield up, bring the defence up slightly. It's maybe a decision that could have been done, but Eddie's got his way, hasn't he? And he doesn't particularly like making the substitutions of plays he's not quite fully on board with, or doesn't quite fully trust maybe in those positions, and that's a little concerning. But the squad is thin at the moment. We all know that it is. There have to be additions really where they possibly can, and it's going to be really difficult this window with the FFP constraints. So yeah, we'll move on. New Monkey Tapes need to use the Saudi loan market, and I'll get into the kind of transfer issue where I think Newcastle have to be clever and do some of this. I know they've sort of said no to this, but realistically, they're going to have to be looking at something like to try and bring in one or two others to try and just give bodies, and hopefully, they can try and get the likes of Anderson back at some point, of Barnes back quicker. They're really, really struggling in terms of numbers. Like I said, we talk about the bench, it's really thin, and that just doesn't help at all. Ian Longstaff, how many chances? Not good enough. Of the three today, I thought Miley was really quiet when he started for the first 20 minutes. It didn't look like he was really on the field, didn't get really involved, and then he sort of came out of his shell a little bit as Newcastle got a little bit of a grip on the game. I don't think playing on the left-hand side of a three suits Sean Longstaff with all that injury to Joe Linton really hurt Newcastle today. Like I say, Sean on the left, it doesn't suit him. He's much better from the right-hand side of that three in front of Bruno. But he has to be able to adapt. But his passing isn't there. We've seen in recent weeks his shooting isn't as good as it really should be. There were three opportunities against Sunderland in the first half where realistically he should have at least 2 goals. And he's at that stage where he has to start taking those chances. He has to make the most of this opportunity, because he very well could be one of the early names out the door, because it is a saleable asset. He will bring in pure profit in terms of FFP. And is he good enough really for where Newcastle want to take that next step? So he really has to start picking up those performances a little bit. The man cloud, it hurts with Darren Proud, City world class side. No, yeah, look, it's really easy to be really critical of the way things went today. It really is. But City are class, and when they're able to bring on the likes of De Bruyne, who just strolls around, and there were points today where I thought even for the 20 minutes that he was on the field, he didn't look fit enough. But he just finds those little areas of space, and when he picks that ball up from Rodri, that beautiful little round the corner ball with the outside of Rodri's foot, and he's in so much space and he's just able to pass the ball into the back of the net. And that's the difference. And then the ball through where he dinks over the top that just gets in behind Kieran Trippier for Oscar Bob to cut across for the winner right at the death is just that's the level of player that City have, and Newcastle aren't there, nowhere near there yet, and they've got a long way to go before they get to that squad. But there were signs again today that there's some promising. There are some really good positives there. Bruno, I thought, was very good in terms of some of his play, his defensive duties. I thought he did well. That clearance that he had in the second half where the ball gets cut across and Phil Foden's pretty much got an open goal behind him if he can just sort himself out. And Bruno nicks back, having given the ball away in the first place. But he doesn't slack. He gets back and he gets in the tackle, and then he gets the clearance away and wins the free kick as well. I thought that was excellent from him, and he looked very, very good. Add to that the performance of Miley, and there are signs, and Gordon and Isak, obviously there are pieces now of this, not the final jigsaw, but the next step, and 2 or 3 additions to that. It's not far away. Vincent, yeah, it's a painful one to take. Yeah, it is, when you're losing that late, and I guess that the direction of the game was always going to be against Newcastle. It was always going to be the bulk of City's possession, the bulk of City's opportunities in front of goal. I think they had 27 chances, 27 shots, 11 on target. But I mean, they had 73% possession, which isn't always a great look. And I think that was pretty much average across the both halves. I think it was 70% in the first half and 76% the second half. So it was, it didn't change really in either half. But Newcastle had the chances. They created 12 shots themselves, 5 of those on target, and realistically should have done better. They should have probably had a third. They should have, that one in the 5th minute that the 3 players completely cocked up. I'm still bewildered as to how they didn't score at that opportunity. But it's easy to say that now with hindsight. Tiger Studios, Eddie needs to go. 9 losses in 10 games. That was top. Look, it's been a difficult run. I don't think there's a chance of that. I don't think it's right. I think he does have the credit in the bank to be able to see this out. There are players that need to return from injury. The loss of Tonali, I've seen that in the comments as well. The loss of Tonali for the season is obviously a big one at this point, because you don't have those fresh legs to be able to come in. But there's, like I said, there are signs. There are positives to take from this. As downbeat as you may feel about another defeat, City are on a roll. City are the Premier League champions, the Champions League champions, the world champions, the World Club champions. There's a reason for it, and Newcastle pretty much went toe to toe for them in terms of the game. Maybe it's not possession wise, but certainly outcome wise, they very, very nearly got another draw against City, and it really. As much as you can look at the possession, and possession doesn't mean everything, I don't think a draw would have flattered Newcastle at all. I think they played exceptionally well. Certainly first half. Second half, it was more backs to the wall. But there's definitely a big positive to take from that at all. Let's have a look. Dave should have taken Isak off when he was shattered. Lewis Hall in the midfield, next to midfield. Yeah, absolutely. I think Hall probably should have come on a little bit earlier. They were talking about bringing Lascelles on for Bruno, which I nearly had a heart attack when I thought of dropping another midfielder out of that. But Lewis Hall coming on should have happened earlier. I know I made a joke about Matt Ritchie being 67 years old, but even Matt Ritchie coming on to just do a job and give fresh legs for 20 minutes might have been an option too. And like I say, the young lad up front, just to give legs to run into the corners. I honestly think that should have happened in Paris as well. And that's the comparison that I draw for it. It's just, you need to give them the opportunity to be able to run into and run down those defenders and get some time on. And otherwise, there's just no point in them being on the bench. Really, you may as well not name them if you're not ever going to use them. And that's frustrating. to see. And when players are completely out on their feet and can't run the way that you need them to, it is. I guess from a young player's perspective at that point, is that disheartening? Does that show a lack of trust from Eddie Howe? Interesting to see what you think in the comments. Ricky, without Joe Linton, it was always going to be extra difficult. Remember how important? Yeah, absolutely right. Joe Linton has been monumental in some of those games, and really his physicality and his energy in those midfield battles, especially against a side like City, where he can really get stuck into them. And they didn't like it when Newcastle got stuck into them. Certainly in the second half of that first half, they really didn't like it, and it was a big miss. And he'd be a big miss for the 6 weeks or so that he's going to be out for. Absolutely. Phil, we aren't going to do anything this year. Maybe top 8 will be something, but this season is a bit of a write-off, sadly. I have a question, and I'll forgive for kind of missing out a lot of the comments in this bit, but and we'll get towards some of the newer ones soon. But I have a question for you. Obviously, take out the fact that Newcastle qualified for the Champions League, and you can shoot me down for this. I really don't mind. As progression-wise for Newcastle, had you finished in the top 7 last season, got to a cup final with some of the results that you had, and qualified for Europe, regardless of the competition, had a game like you've had, like there's been against PSG this season, and there've been some of the results, the consecutive wins against Manchester United across the 2 seasons, the cup win against Manchester City and things, and a realistic possibility of Newcastle finishing the top 7 this season. Would you have taken that last season? It's difficult to kind of go from that point with being already having Champions League football, but would you have taken 2 top 7 finishes at cup final and progression on and off the field? Would you see that, or is it more frustrating because there's been that Champions League football and that's where you really want to maintain at this point? As just like I say, it'd just be interesting to see what your thoughts are in the comments about that. It was something that came out to me. I was at work today, and just looking at that, it just was one of those thoughts where we know that Newcastle maybe has progressed a little bit too early or a bit too quickly in terms of where they are financially and able to really attack that top 4 again. But yeah, like I say, just an interesting one that I just thought I would drop in and see what you guys' thoughts were. I'm just trying to find some more for the comments. There's a lot of people sort of wanting putting in comments about how I really don't agree. There's absolutely no way he goes unless the season absolutely implodes. I cannot see any reason why Eddie Howe would leave this season. I really don't. Let's go. Yeah, David, our increased annual revenue stream, 40% plus sale at Adidas Champions League, over 400 million in the bag to spend and strengthen. Maybe. Look, you've got to take into account the fact that you've got player purchases to transfer over into next season, the amortization that will carry on into the next few seasons. Like I say, if you can cash in on a couple that will give you pure profit, then that really opens the door. If you wanted to sell Sean Longstaff for 20 million, that then opens the door to 80 million, 90 million worth of purchase or amortization of transfer fees over 5 years. It really does open the door. And if you then adding more and more commercial revenue, is it 39% each year for the last 2 years of increased commercial revenue? The progress is there off the field, and that then needs to start to translate onto the field. So yeah, it's that's a really positive sign. David, no disgrace losing the World Cups. Yeah, we said that absolutely. Ty, seriously, go out in the summer and buy 10 to 15. Take the punishment. it seems really, really tempting, doesn't it? Just to take the hit, take a penalty and move on. But it depends on how severe they could be. We don't know what City might get, if anything. We know this talk of the sort of the cartel, isn't it, trying to keep everybody out. It seems really, really tempting just to say, let's go out and sign everybody, when you don't know what the potential punishment might be. So yeah, it's I can kind of see your point with that one. Robbie, thank you very much for the super sticker. Good lad, thank you very much for that. That's really kind of you. Agent text streams, authors think we played well for 70 minutes. We had no subs. Look, it was one of those performances, wasn't it, against it at the moment a much better side. And we have to admit that. We have to say that Newcastle were second best, really, in terms of the overall game. But they did go toe to toe, and it wasn't a dreadful performance. There were elements of it that were really frustrating. Passing, the last sort of 35 minutes or so where balls going forward to absolutely nobody. There were moments where Cher or Dan Burn were getting onto the right-hand side or left-hand side and then just putting balls up the line, and there's absolutely nobody there because Anthony Gordon's so deep. Mickey's come back and is so deep. There's just nobody to be able to challenge it and put City under pressure at that point. And that's where the ball just keeps coming back and back and back. And they're so good at it. City is so good at playing like that. And you have to give them credit for that. But they've had a decade or so of being able to build to this point, and they were able to start this process before FFP. Let's remember, they didn't have this problem at the very beginning. And then, well, we'll see the outcome of their 115 charges at some point. But look, there's no denying that they are a special team. Let's have a look. So, I'm trying to just find some. I'm trying to scroll through all the ones that are. I like this one. Rocky Osimhen straight swap for Longstaff. I'm not sure that one would get the go-ahead, but I like your optimism. I really do. I think Osimhen playing in the Premier League would be great. There was talk of Chelsea signing him for 100 million. I really don't understand that at all. And then Asset, richest club, really, win the lottery, can only spend it. Do you know what? Yes, I completely agree with this one. And it's absolutely, it is really, really annoying when you go, well, I understand why FFP is in. I understand the need to protect smaller clubs from overspending and being able to, getting themselves into trouble and going out of business. We're still seeing that, by the way, where clubs are going out of business because they can't afford to keep up with their operational costs and stuff. But the fact that the likes of Newcastle, Manchester City, Chelsea, I guess, for an example, Everton's owners got plenty of money, although they're struggle with having spent it all far too quickly. But if the owners have the money to spend, why should they be prevented from spending it? I understand why you would prevent a side that doesn't have the wealthy owners being able to overspend and get themselves into problems. But if your owners can cover those costs, why should you be prevented from being able to spend the money? It does seem like an issue where you're right. If you win the lottery and somebody said, well, here's £100 million, but you can only spend a couple of grand a year, it's ridiculous. It wouldn't happen. And I guess from an owner's perspective at that point, they're sitting there with money burning holes in their pockets because they can't get it out the door quick enough, and having to bring more money in commercially and things like that is just slowing the process down, I guess, for them, and that's got to be annoying. Let's have a look. So, more comments. There's lots of comments about Sean Longstaff. Ty, increase the allowable losses from 105 to 300 over 3. There was a good thread or a good couple of posts on X from Kieran Maguire regarding the change of or inflation in terms of that 105 million, and that stood static for a while. And if that had increased by a the rate of inflation, then Newcastle would be in a much better position to be able to spend a lot more, as would other clubs, obviously. But there's been no change to that in quite a number of years, like I say. So it's those sorts of things that you have to look at and go, well, why? And again, it just doesn't allow that competition. And I guess that comment from before about the anti-competition thing is right, because you are preventing teams being able to compete at the level that they want to be at. So yeah, I definitely agree with that one. Pilgey's Bard, biggest change we need to face is medical team, bottom playing with no diagnosis, which is shocking, absolutely shocking. Joe picking up an injury requiring 6 weeks out, someone still clear. I'm really confused. That one against Sunderland where he comes back on. I mean, he looks like he was struggling at the end of the first half. What they were doing, bringing him on, I sort of said last week, I sort of half understood it by kind of the 1-0, the 1-0 up, and not wanting to allow Sunderland to get back into the game. But he was clearly struggling. And even when he came out for the second, although he didn't have to move an awful lot before he scored the second goal, he was clearly not moving right, and should never have come out for the second half. Sean said their injuries simply destroying the season, and there's so many. And I wonder, with what's going on, is a lot of these more preventable, or the number of the types of injuries that are being picked up, are they preventable? Is it down to the way that they're being trained? Is it down to the intensity of the gameplay and the training that Eddie's got them doing? Is there changes that he needs to make at that level? And I know Newcastle haven't trained as much between games because of the number of running games, but it's this pure intensity. We have it as one of our stickers on here. I think that this intensity is our identity, and that there's got to be a point in which that's fine, but you have to have another option. You have to be able to sort of take the foot off the gas, and do what some of the other teams do, and play the ball around and keep the ball and wait for your opportunities, and not always be trying to push forward and get in teams' faces. Just step back and allow yourself to retain possession, get a little bit of confidence on the ball. Just wait for the opposition to press around you, be able to then find gaps in behind them. And Newcastle are very good at that. They've got plenty of pace up top in terms of Miggy, who 2 right-footed crosses today, by the way, and that nearly had me falling off my chair. I'll get that one into today as well. But the pace of Isak and Gordon and Miggy are a threat. And if you can maintain possession and play it around and wait for opposition to sort of be pulled out of position, and then attack those gaps, then absolutely, then there's got to be that sort of, I think there has to be that sort of mentality of, if you play with that mindset in certain games. And today might have been more difficult to do that because of the way that Manchester City dominate possession. But it certainly has to start looking at an alternative or a plan B. I think is there really doesn't seem to be an awful lot of a plan B at the moment. But that, again, a lot of that has to do with the lack of availability of players. Let's have a look at some more comments. Nobby should sell something. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Selling Anthony Gordon is a ridiculous comment there. I'm really sorry. Rothwell how doesn't have a play? No, clearly at the moment he doesn't. And we've seen over the last couple of seasons there is a very definitive way of playing. He's not willing to move away from that. But I think he has to develop another option. He has to develop his players to be able to play a different way. So I'm just laughing at some of the other comments regarding that guy. So look, there's work to be done. There absolutely is. I think Eddie Howe's got he got 2 weeks now before the FA Cup game. If you haven't caught Chris's rant with regard to the FA Cup kickoff time as well, make sure you check that one out on the channel. Again, it's the FA. Total disregard to any football fan traveling that sort of distance with no ability to get home using the rail network, because the game kicks off too late. So by the time that the game's finished, there are no trains to get home. Brilliant bit of planning by the FA there. So yeah, check that one out, guys. That's a good one from Chris. Yeah, I just look at this, like 66. If we stop playing the ball around, keep possession loads, and he'll be moaning that we don't attack enough. There's a fickle nature to football fans, isn't there, when things change like that? And I think, but sometimes you have to accept that you've got to go through a little bit of that, and it can't always be on the front foot. You can't always be that intense press. You've got to sometimes give yourself the ability to have a break and to recoup your energy. And look, Anthony Gordon plays at 100 miles an hour pretty much for 90 minutes where he can, and today he couldn't last. And 60 minutes in, he could barely run. And this is the problem, because he's putting so much energy into that press, because he's chasing down everything and he's so fired up, he can't last. And that has to be addressed, absolutely. Let's have a look. Davey, who actually thought we'd beat City tonight? Well, at 2-1, there's a fair few that thought that might have been the case. But you go into the game, and a lot of people thought it would be a City win. A lot of people thought that it wasn't going to be a steamroller, but it was going to be. I thought it would be close. I thought, for my sins, I said I thought City would win 2-1 tonight. But look, it was close. At the end of the day, possession's wonderful, but if you don't score the goals, then it means absolutely nothing. And Newcastle scored twice without having an awful lot of possession. They played that first half really, really well. But ultimately, they just couldn't get quite over the line. But we'll go back to some of the commentary, Ian here. The press didn't work as they technically passed us, and that's part of that plan B issue. If that's not working, then you need to have to be able to do something different, because the high press, the intense press, isn't always going to be an option. It's not always going to work, and the better teams will pass around you. They will create those gaps. City play so well in those triangles, and they're just able to pass it around and find those gaps. And Foden will come and sit in that little hole behind the midfield. De Bruyne did exactly the same when he came on, and just sat in that hole, and he finds little pockets to be able to give himself a yard of space and destroy teams doing it. And look, we'll see Newcastle get to that point. I'm absolutely sure of that. There's a long road ahead. I guess we'll hopefully see some players come in during this window. Probably not as many would like. I think the summer will be big. I think there are plenty of players to go. There's at least 8 or 9 that are out of contract in the summer. 1 or 2 may get extra deals. I know there's talk of Lascelles getting a new deal. I'm not sure I would do that if I was the boss. I know they've given Share another year. I think realistically, you could give, if I can get my words out, if you could give Lascelles another year, he becomes a sellable asset in the summer. Do you perhaps maybe try and cash in him 10 or 12 million pounds? That gives you more money to spend. So those sort of things to look at for this summer. But I do think we'll see a lot more player income in the summer once there's more cash come in. If you can get a few more players sold, we may see the likes of Miggy go, the likes of Longstaff, who has already been rumoured to be on the, pretty much on the shopping, on the selling list. So it's definitely one to look for this summer. But there's a lot of football to go before then. What's this one? So Fraser's gone, he'll not be back. We need depth there. I don't think there's any chance of Fraser ever coming back into into the squad, regardless of what happens this season. He will be gone. So yeah, there's a fair few, the likes of Hayden, who's on a long-term contract, and this harks back to the previous regime, and giving out these long-term deals to the likes of Hendrick and Hayden and players that really not good enough for this level, but brought in, and they were, I guess, players that were victim of the time that they were brought in, because they were decent players at probably at another level, but just not Premier League quality, really not. And the fact that they are still at the club, and still in Hayden's choice, they've still got 2 years left on their contract, is just utter madness. So yeah, we'll see plenty more. I think we'll, go back to the game. Look, it's annoying. It's really frustrating to have seen a 2-1 lead turn into a 3-2 defeat. But there's no shame in losing to City, like we say. It is annoying, but you move on, and you've got 2 weeks now until the FA Cup game, and then the Villa game, I think, on the Tuesday night. So there's time for players to get a little bit of rest and plenty of training in, and hopefully we might see a couple of players start to return to the squad. I'm going to leave it there tonight, guys. So thank you very much for joining me. Obviously, as we said at the beginning, if you are new to the channel, please drop a like on the video, and consider subscribing too. We are just a few away from 6,300 now. So yeah, as Chris would say, smash that button, whichever one you like. All of our content is free. If you do want to give something back to the channel, there is an option at the bottom, as we did tonight with a super sticker. There's options there for to become a member of the channel, or even to use the super thanks. But look, that's entirely up to you. Nothing is hidden behind a paywall or anything like that. So yeah, if you want to help the channel out, that's entirely up to you. But happy for you to just come along and join us in the chat. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, guys, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Cheers. Bye.